All right.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us this evening for Women's History along the Detroit Riverfront, our virtual tour with the City Institute. My name is Addison Mock. I'm the Public Spaces Manager with the Detroit Riverfront Conservancy. And I'm going to kick us off just by giving you a brief introduction to the Detroit Riverfront Conservancy. We are the nonprofit stewards of the riverfront and the greenways that are associated with it, namely the DeQuinder Cut and the Archer Greenway. And we have been the nonprofit stewards of this space since 2003. You'll see on the slide that Jeanette is sharing here some pictures that show you all of the different parks that we have in all of our seasons, which is a big part of what we have been celebrating, especially post-pandemic, is all the ways to be outside in all 4 seasons. So in the top left, you see folks at Valade Park. We just wrapped up our Winter at Valade series, which was 3 months of celebrations of the winter season with fire pits and s'mores and sledding and all sorts of themed weekends to get folks outside and enjoying the winter time. Below it is what Valade looks like in the summertime. Our parks are certainly most known for what happens in the summer, whether you're playing at the carousel at Mount Elliott, which is the the carousel at Cullen Plaza, and the water feature at Mount Elliott are kind of our signature summer opportunities. But we have things to do, like I said, all 4 seasons and all throughout. So if you're trying to get to the riverfront from somewhere like the DeQuinder Cut or the Archer Greenway, which are those 2 pictures you see on the top there, those are the greenways that we manage to help folks get to the riverfront from various neighborhoods. And Gabriel Richard on the far right corner picture up there is our furthest east park. So the riverfront vision is to extend from bridge to bridge, from the Belle Isle Bridge all the way to the Ambassador Bridge. So we go as far east as Gabriel Richard at the base of the Belle Isle Bridge, and we'll be starting construction soon on Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Centennial Park, which will take us all the way over to the Ambassador Bridge on the west side. So there is a lot of history to be covering and how we got to all of these spaces and even the things that happened long before that. And that is why we have brought in Jeanette Pierce from the City Institute. And I will turn it over to you, Jeanette, to let us know all the stories you've got for us this evening.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Addison, and thank you to the entire Detroit Riverfront Conservancy team for everything you do to bring such amazing spaces to us here in Detroit, and for inviting me to tell some stories about women along the riverfront and the history, because there is so much amazing history. And so that is the theme of today's virtual tour. And if you haven't been on a virtual tour before, you might be wondering, what does that mean exactly? Is it just a PowerPoint presentation? And the answer is, it is partially a presentation, but we're actually going to go on the map, on the street in Detroit, along the riverfront. And so that's part that makes it the more interactive virtual tour, which is a really great tool that we came up with over the pandemic and that we're going to continue to use, because we have people joining us from all over right now. And we get to record it and have it live on Facebook and seen by so many people. A little bit about myself. I'm a lifelong Detroiter. I grew up on the far east side, on East Warren, East Outer Drive in the Morningside neighborhood. And I moved downtown when I graduated college in 2003. So that was almost 20 years ago. That makes me officially old now. And I realized, I was like, I know Detroit. I thought I knew Detroit. And then I started walking places. And then I realized I was an East Sider and that I didn't know the West Side, I only knew part of Southwest Detroit. And there was so much more to learn about my own city. And so I just became obsessed with gathering every bit of information, both from the history and architecture, but also the stories of the people and the small businesses throughout history, but also specifically today. We have so many amazing businesses and organizations and people in Detroit doing great work. And that's what led me to start what became the Detroit Experience Factory and now City Institute. So locally, City Institute provides a deeper understanding of Detroit, so its residents and stakeholders can be better equipped to shape an equitable and thriving city. But we also work across the country and the world, and we do that by sharing lessons learned from Detroit to inspire individuals, organizations, and communities to innovate for a better future for all. And this is all expanding on the work of Detroit Experience Factory, which educated locals and visitors about the people, places, and projects in Detroit and took 150,000 people on experiential tours between 2006 and 2021. What a ride it's been. But this is really geared towards locals learning more about their own community, the past, present, and the future. So let's get started. A little logistics. If you have questions, we have Kia from our team in the chat with you to answer any questions throughout the tour. She's also going to be putting some links to learn more about the places and people that we talk about. And then after the presentation part and the tour part, I'll stop sharing my screen and we can have a more interactive conversation with questions and everything. So you can either put your questions in the chat during, or we can wait till after to have a conversation. So on that note, let's start with where all history tours need to start, which is talking about the indigenous peoples in any place. And for this, along the Detroit River. And obviously the river, as in many places, is what draws people for thousands of years to a place. And we have an entire tours and work with the Detroit Indigenous Peoples Alliance to talk more about the past and present of the indigenous peoples here in the Detroit area and Michigan. But I want to just quickly touch on this. There's a lot of people don't realize that that people have been in what is today Michigan for 10,000 years, coming originally through the Upper Peninsula and working their way down to what is today southeastern Michigan about 4,000 years ago. And then they've actually done an archaeological dig in southwest Detroit that shows there's been people there there was a settlement there 1,000 years ago, all along using the river as the epicenter for the settlements, of course, because fresh water, extremely important. This is a map of when the Native American settlements, after Europeans were here, and that is the Potawatomi and Wyandotte, Fox and Ottawa, the Lutes in Miami, but the Ojibwe, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi joined together to form the Anishinaabe tribe or collaboration. And those are the people that are still very active in Detroit today. And the name that the Anishinaabe Moan word is for Detroit is called Wawayatanong, which actually describes the river, basically the bend in the river, how the river is the center of everything. And so I think that's really important to recognize that the river has historically been and is still today an extremely important part of the community here. And then, of course, you have the European arrival. This is the flag of Detroit on the left. How many people put in the chat or the comments if you are familiar with the Detroit flag? I feel like we don't talk about this nearly enough either, but it tells about the European history of Detroit. I would love to see an indigenous piece represented come to the flag, but I guess that's another conversation. But you have the fleur-de-lis here in the left, on the lower left-hand corner, and that represents the French, and they were the first Europeans to arrive in Detroit, or what is today Detroit, and that was 1701, and that was a guy named Antoine Cadillac, right? So you recognize that name, and we'll be talking about Madame Cadillac in a little bit. You then have the British, the lines here in the upper right-hand corner. The British took over in 1760, and then the Stars and Stripes for the Americans, of course, which took over in 1796. And it was actually Colonel Hamtramck who raised the American flag over the city of Detroit for the first time on July 11th, 1796. And then the city seal here, which is one of my favorite pieces of Detroit history. And it was, when I learned this, looking it up in a book 20 years ago, I was amazed that I had lived in Detroit my whole life and never heard about it. And so I always tell people what it stands. It stands for, this is the Great Fire of Detroit is pictured here behind these women. In 1805, the whole town burned to the ground. It was 300 wooden structures, and they were almost all lost in the Great Fire. And then in Latin, it says, Speramos meliora resurgit generibus, which means we hope for better things. It will arise from the ashes. And I love it because we have literally and figuratively rebuilt ourselves, reinvented ourselves many times in our 300 plus, 1,000 plus, thousands of plus years here on this land. And it's why we're still gonna rise up again today. That's a big part of it. We're gonna face challenges, and Detroit has faced more challenges probably than its share. But we have also continued to be innovative and inspirational to so many. We're going to talk about some of those innovative and inspirational women throughout history just coming up next. And you can see this is an old a drawing of the fort in Detroit, but also what they called ribbon farms. So everybody wanted access to the water. So the idea was that instead of one long farm that took up most of the waterfront, that you'd have these long skinny farms that everybody had access to the water. And some of the people that owned some of these farms are names that you might recognize, like Rivard, Beaubien, Saint Antoine, and so forth. And many of those streets were named after where the ribbon farm that was owned by that person lived. So when we talk about women, one of the first women that we're going to talk about today is Madame Marie Therese Cadillac. And we're going to, again, be going back and forth between maps and the presentation and those kind of things. And so when we're talking about where that fort was today, we can actually go to the map and see where the fort was in comparison, where Antoine Cadillac, when he founded Fort Detroit. Again, people had been here for generations, so they were not the first people, but built the first fort. And that would be, and there's actually a marker here in the middle of Hart Plaza that is a statue of Antoine Cadillac, and that fort would have been pretty much like where Jefferson is, Jefferson to Fort Street. Sound familiar, right? And right here, there are 3 forts over the years, and we can go big into the history, but I always wanted to go to the map to show you what we're talking about, right? And again, if we go back to this, you can even see where the fort was right there. And so this woman, Madame Marie Therese Cadillac, and it's really interesting, if you go in and dive into Antoine Cadillac, and that was not even his name, but that's a whole nother story. He was called that when he married Marie Therese Guillon in Quebec, and she was born in Quebec, and they were married in 1687, so she was 16 years old, and then her husband received word that he was gotten the permission to go and find this and start a settlement on the strait, because we might not realize, but the Detroit River, not a river, it's a strait, and that it connects Lake Erie and Lake St. Clair, and it's 32 miles long. And so Cadillac wanted his wife and child to join him once he arrived, to prove that the settlement was a suitable place for family life. And she wasn't super excited about this. She had a 9-year-old son at this point, and he's like, come on over, take a canoe ride, meet me in Detroit. And she wasn't excited, but she did it. So her and the wife of Cadillac's lieutenant, Madame de Tonty, they arrived in October of 1701. So it was July 23rd that Antoine Cadillac arrived. And then it was October when she arrived, and it was Fort Pontchartrain du Détroit. Pontchartrain was the French minister of finance, otherwise known as the guy who paid for the trip, right? And Détroit meaning the strait or the narrow, because and they chose the narrowest point between the 2 landmasses for their fort. And so you don't hear as much about her, right? Which is the whole kind of theme about why it's so important to tell women's histories and to find out and make sure we lift up these stories, both again in the past, but also today. But she took on many responsibilities and administrative duties for the settlement. She hired voyagers, signed contract, served as a doctor to the 200 inhabitants and neighboring Native Americans. And when her husband was recalled to Quebec, during his absences, she maintained the fort. She basically ran the place. And while they were here, all of this while also having the women's side of things. So you're taking care of all of this, but they had many more children at that point as well. And at one point, she had a total of 13 children. 4 of them died at a very early age. So she's handling all these things and also having to deal with losing children and being a mother to many children. I mean, just the layers of responsibility that she had is hard to imagine, right? Madame Cadillac, and there's actually a really great relief of her in the Cadillac on the People Mover station near CompuWare, or the One Campus Marcius building, of her arriving in Detroit. And she, after Cadillac was removed from Detroit, she went to France and she lived there until she died in 1746. So a little bit about Madame Cadillac to start us off. But one of my favorite stories here is actually of an Indigenous woman who had such a powerful impact on history, not just in Detroit or Windsor, but throughout, really impacted the entire country's history. And so Sarah, or Sally Ains, was an Oneida woman, and she had a trading business in upstate New York, and she moved to Detroit around 1775. And in doing so, moving across the country at that point, like we were the west part of the United States, and we weren't even, the United States, obviously. And she expanded her business. She did trading in furs, cider, and other goods. And that's when she took on the name Sally Ains. She purchased a house and a lot. So this is a Native American woman owning property in Detroit, and then bought the neighboring lot to make a total of 32 feet wide, which was really big then. And in the 1779 census, it says that she owned cows, horses, and 100 pounds of flour. And then in 1787, she sold her property in Detroit and began living on land near present-day Chatham, Ontario. So she crossed the river and had a house built along with farms, a cornfield, orchard, and continued to trade in the Detroit region. She was the most powerful woman powerful and richest woman in Detroit at that time, and continued to trade, and was also an ally and liaison to Joseph Brant, who was a big during the Northwest Indian War, and we can go into all of that. That was a war we fought. The United States fought with Native populations here after the Revolutionary War, and it led up to negotiations leading up to the Treaty of Greenville, which you can see is pictured here. So it was the Treaty of Greenville. You had the Battle of Fallen Timbers in 1794, which is just outside of Toledo. And that was kind of the final war where the Americans got control over what then was called the Northwest Territory. And she was that ally, liaison, and messenger for Joseph Brant during that, and basically helped get the Treaty of Greenville signed. So this is, and this is again, how many people have heard of Sally Ains, right? And the amazing things that she did in a time when every barrier possible was put up against her. So, I mean, just that's what we're going to talk about. I mean, every woman I'm just so amazed at. And you can even see her signature here. And she, most women didn't have signatures at that time, or wouldn't find it on things, but because of the role that she played, she had that. So absolutely amazing. Another historic hero is Lisette Denison IV, and they just their Oakland County History, the Oakland History Center actually just published a book about her. So this is, we talk about her on so many different tours because she should be one of the most famous Detroit people in history. And we're working on it. We're working more and more. A lot of people are talking about her more. So we're kind of going chronologically. So we were like 1701 with Madame Cadillac, and then up into the 1780s. And this is actually when Lisette, Elizabeth, but she went by Lisette Denison, was born into slavery in the 1780s. It's something that we also don't hear much about, but that we had slavery in Detroit. And we hear about it frequently as like something that only the South had, but it's not true. We had it here. We talk a little bit more about that on our Redlining Racism and Segregation tour, virtual tour we do monthly. So if you want to learn more about that, also Jamon Jordan, the official historian of Detroit and Black Scroll Network and Tours, speaks a lot about that period. And there's also a book by Dr. Miles called Dawn of Detroit that really delves into that. And it was that book that when it was released just a few years ago that really woke up people to realizing that that we did have slavery in Detroit, and that continued even after it was outlawed. So it was outlawed in 1787, and we actually doubled from around 180 people enslaved to more than 300 people enslaved after it became illegal. So definitely something, a horrible part of our past, but important to know about. So she was born into slavery. And then in 1807, and there's a big long, it's really interesting story. Like her parents were freed and they were hoping that she would be freed, that their kids would be freed. But they said no. And so, but in 1807, Lisette and her brother escaped and crossed into Canada with their parents who had been freed and their other siblings. And they established residency in Canada, which was a big thing because that means that they gained their freedom. And they could have just hung out there, right? But in 1815, she came back from Canada and she lived free here in Detroit, and actually was employed by several prominent families and had a close relationship with many of them who helped her invest what she was paid in land. And so get this, in 1825, and this is this historical marker, which you can kind of read here, she purchased 48.5 acres of land in what is today Pontiac, Michigan, becoming the first Black property owner in the city. And they think actually in all of Oakland County. And she was a woman, a Black woman, a formerly enslaved Black woman. And this historical marker commemorates that ownership. She didn't live there, but she leased it to her brother's family. And eventually the land was sold and is now Oak Hill Cemetery. And so if anyone's been in Pontiac, and we're actually working with Pontiac and doing Pontiac tours as well. So if you want to, there's a lot of great history, but also great small businesses today in Pontiac. But that's not it. In 1831, she was employed by then Mayor John Biddle and worked with him for 30 years and continued to invest. She bought stock in a steamboat and a bank. She had a home in Detroit, and she attended Old Mariners Church in Detroit. And this is where we're going to go to the map and see Mariners Church. If you guys have been on Jefferson, you have driven by it, right? It is right at the border, what is now the border to Canada. And we're going to go put the little Google guy here and look at that. Mariners Church. See, here's the Renaissance Center. Here's Mariners Church. This was built in 1849. It's the second oldest church building in Detroit after St. Peter's and Paul's, which is just down there. And it was actually moved 800 feet to make room for Hart Plaza. And that's when they added this bell tower, which was made famous in the song, The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, where they say, and the bell chimed 29 times for each man on the Edmund Fitzgerald. That's the bell they're talking about. But this was where Lisette Denison went to church. And it itself is an amazing story. And again, we could go into so many different things, but short story is 2 women started this church and they made it so that there could be retail level. So like if you haven't looked at the backside of it, you could actually see that there's retail spaces here. And this was so they could collect rent for renting the space and not have to charge the Mariners, the temporary people coming through to go to church. Because normally at this time, you would have to pay X amount and you'd have a bench with your name on it, and that's where your family sat and you paid for that. And so they wanted to make it accessible for everybody to come to church even if they didn't have money, and people from all walks of life and different colors worshiped at Old Mariners Church. And this inspired Lisette Denison, so much so that when she passed away, she left her money to build a similar church on Grosse Ile. And so this is one of those fun parts of the virtual tour. I don't go to Grosse Ile on many tours, but we can just pop over there right now. So let's, for those that aren't familiar, Grosse Ile is this island in what we call, say, downriver, right? And this is where the Biddles spent a lot of time, the streets named Biddle and all of those things. And this is St. James Church. This is what was founded by Lisette Denison and her money. And she said, I want a place where everybody can worship together and from all walks of life. And that's what she was the founder of this. And you can see they even just recently restored and got some doors, and it's the Lisette Denison doors here. So that is part of her legacy, but again, absolutely amazing at the barriers as a formerly enslaved Black woman owning land, owning property, owning and helping create other spaces for other women and other people like St. James. So one of my favorite stories that we need to get out there a little bit more. Another amazing woman from history, and then we're going to get to some modern day stuff too. So I'm going to try to go a little bit quicker through some of this, but it is, each one is their own book, right? Is their own story. So now we're moving up, and this is 1832, and Laura Haviland was a Quaker who co-founded the Logan Female Anti-Slavery Society and the Raisin Institute, which became a safe space for African-American fugitives of slavery and attracted Black settlers in Michigan. And this next part hits a little too close to home with what we've been dealing with in recent years. In the spring of 1845, an epidemic killed 6 members of her family, including both of her parents, her husband, and her youngest child. And she also became very sick, but survived. And so at 36, she found herself a widow with 7 children to support, a farm to run, the Raisin Institute to manage, and substantial debts to repay. But in spite of those personal losses, I mean, how many, like I can't even comprehend what she was going through, because despite all of that, she continued her abolitionist work. And in 1851, she helped organize the Refugee Home Society in Windsor, Ontario, and where escaped former slaves were settled there. A church and school was erected for them. Each family was given 25 acres to farm. She was also the superintendent on the Underground Railroad in Detroit at the stop, with George de Baptiste being the president and William Lambert the vice president. They gave these kind of unofficial titles. And you can see here, this is a picture of the Underground Railroad Gateway to Freedom Monument by Ed Dwight on the riverfront. And she was so, and she didn't stop there. I mean, that would be enough. I think that, I mean, be absolutely amazing. We'd be talking about her with all of that, but she didn't stop. In the 1840s and 50s, she traveled between Michigan, Ohio, and Canada, assisting freedom seekers to escape and teaching African-American students and making public anti-slavery speeches. So this is a woman in the 1840s and 50s. The enslavers of people in the South had a $3,000 reward for her capture. That is how much they wanted her gone, because she was helping people so much. Another great reason to read Dr. Talia Miles, the Dawn of Detroit book that talks about this and some of it. So it was absolutely amazing. And you can see the Underground Railroad statue here. And there's also one across the river in Canada. And we were obviously, again, entire tours around this, but the final stop before true freedom in Canada in the Underground Railroad, it's estimated that 40,000 people passed through the Underground Railroad in Detroit to freedom. And so it is a big part of our history, and another person that doesn't get as much credit as some of the male counterparts that she has. And then moving up into more modern times, we're almost to modern times now. And this is Fanny Richards. And Fanny Richards was the first Black school teacher in Detroit. And she was born free in 1840, and her parents were all about education. She grew up in Toronto, studied in Germany with William Froebel, who basically invented kindergarten, like the idea of learning and playing and how they're associated, right? And so she came to Detroit, and in 1863 became the city's first Black school teacher. Then she opened a private school for Black children, and then during all of this is one of the leading proponents for desegregation of Detroit schools. So in 1869, after an intense campaign, the Michigan Supreme Court ordered the Detroit Board of Education to abolish separate schools for Black and white students. And Richards was transferred to the newly integrated Everett Elementary School, where she taught for 44 years. And that's where she established the first kindergarten in the state of Michigan. And she didn't retire until 1915, after more than 50 years of service. But she didn't just do education. She helped found the Phyllis Wheatley Home for Aged Colored Ladies, an institution that helped poor and elderly Black women. She was a founder of the Michigan State Association of Colored Women, taught Sunday school at the Historic Baptist Church, which is in Greektown. If you've been to Greektown, everyone loves the Opa and the Saganaki. That's great, but the Second Baptist Church is there. And we can actually see her historical marker right near the riverfront. So now we're going to zoom back to First, we'll do a Second Baptist Church swing by. It's not too far from the riverfront, but an integral part of Detroit's history here, right on Monroe Avenue. And this is Second Baptist Church that was founded in 1836 by 13 former enslaved people. And everyone passes by it. And this was a major stop on the Underground Railroad, was the center of Black community. And she taught Sunday school there as well. And it was not far from her home on near Rivard Street. So if you have been to what used to be called Rivard Plaza, which is today Cullen Plaza, then you have probably driven down Rivard Street, and you can actually will go see where the historical marker is today, right down here. So we can go on the street and see this historical marker, which we can see better a little bit in this photo here of Fanny Richards' home site. Detroit's first Black public school teacher lived on this site in what would it be the Black Bottom neighborhood, which is definitely a part of more recent history. But everybody knew her. Like when you teach for 50 years, just imagine, like it said, they talk about how like she would walk down the street and like everybody was like, you know, hi, Mrs. Richard. Hi, 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 hi. Oh, I remember I taught, you know, you taught me, you taught me. So think about the impact that she had on Detroit on so many different ways, from bringing kindergarten here to educating for 50 years. And I'm really glad that there is a historical marker for her home site. Now, as we're talking about Black Bottom and Paradise Valley and coming into more to modern times, and we can't talk about Detroit and along the riverfront and Black Bottom and Paradise Valley without talking about Aretha Franklin. I mean, Aretha Franklin, obviously we all know Aretha Franklin, but you know, just in 1956, she was 14 years old and made her first recording at this record shop, JVB Records, that was located at 4210 Hastings Street, where the freeway is today. So we go into this a lot more on our other tours, but Black Bottom and Paradise Valley were destroyed by Mayor Cobo, mostly at that time, which is part of the reason we don't have, who ran on a segregationist policy of saving white neighborhoods from the quote unquote Black invasion. This is why we do not have a convention center named for him any longer. But her father was minister at New Bethel Baptist Church, which was also originally in Paradise Valley, and that's where she started singing and gospel. And 75 million records sold worldwide, right? And so we talk about her for two reasons along the riverfront, because it is along the DeQuinder Cut. So where would that have been? Right up here. Not far from the DeQuinder Cut. So we'll zoom out a little bit. And we're going to talk about the DeQuinder Cut coming up too. Right here at Mack Avenue and the freeway, which is where the record store and recording studio would have been. But also, of course, we're going to talk about her along the riverfront because we have now the Aretha Franklin Amphitheater. And if you're not familiar with it, this is one of the most amazing concert venues in the entire state. It opened in 1982, originally just a small stage, and then it continued to kind of build out over the 80s. And then it was originally Shane Park after the street Shane, which was part of the Shane Ribbon Farm. And it was renamed Aretha Franklin Amphitheater after she passed away in 2018. So let's go check out, and now they just call it the Aretha for short a lot of times. So we go into the Aretha tonight. And if you haven't been, this needs to be on your bucket list. If people have been to the Aretha, tell me some shows, put in the chat, put in the comments what shows you've seen at the Aretha Franklin, or formerly Shane Park. So this seats almost 6,000 people, guys. And if you haven't been, if you go on the riverfront, if you've never been inside, you don't really know the scale here, right? So imagine seeing, like, you can also pull up your boat. That's one of the great things, right? You can free concert, free booze, right? If you bring your own boat. I always say it's always, owning a boat, it's a lot of time, a lot of money, but having a friend with a boat, that's always the best way to do it. So 6,000 people. Imagine seeing your favorite artist on a summer night with the wind blowing and the riverfront behind you. Like, it is absolutely a magical place. They also host a lot of graduations and other events of all different kinds. And of course, this is right as part of the 5.5 miles bridge to bridge of the Riverwalk there on right there on Atwater Street. Okay, so now we're up to modern day. Let's talk about some women today that are doing amazing things. I mean, again, we could have this be a 3-hour tour. I'm gonna go a little bit quickly because I want to make sure we have time for questions and conversation. But Kelly Kavanaugh, a good friend, known for years, and she started Wheelhouse Detroit. So now everybody's like, bikes, 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 Detroit, Detroit, Detroit. But in 2008, when she opened Wheelhouse, that was not the case. People are like, biking, Detroit. I mean, Detroiters have always biked, so it's not new. You got Bike Tech over on the east side. It's been there since 1984. And so definitely not new. But this idea, you know, as she was seeing the Riverwalk come to life and come to fruition, like the idea that someone could come and rent a bike, or that she could do bike tours, or that maybe you had a bike, but it's been in the garage for a while, so she will tune it up for you. And so they are opening for the season at the first week in April. But she is a powerhouse woman, and she's not just an entrepreneur and a bike shop owner and a tour guide, but she's also a freelance writer. She's worked in community development. She bartends every once in a while. If you want to have a fun time, go on down to ABIX. I think it's like Friday afternoons. She went through the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program and graduated from University of Detroit Mercy. And has helped to organize the Tour des Trois almost since its founding, which is about to celebrate 20 years of the Tour des Trois. And there's actually a great exhibit opening at the Detroit Historical Museum about that 20 years of one of the largest bike rides all throughout the city. And it's been happening for a very long time. And she really focuses on hiring and lifting up women as well. So 5 out of 6 employees, including owner, manager, mechanic, are all women. And she's been named one of the America's best bike shops 6 years running by the National Bicycle Dealer Association. And she is located right down the street from the Aretha at the fabulous Cullen Plaza. So you have the Cullen Plaza has so many great things to, amazing things, right? You have, well, there's, parking, which is really nice. And you have, I can see the sign here, Wheelhouse Detroit. So right here in the building, and actually I think we can go a little closer than that. You have, zoom, this amazing playground there. And then you have we'll just do this, Wheelhouse Detroit. And so I love this. They have bicycles built for 2. You ever saw the beginning of, Three's Company and thought that looks fun to go, bicycle built for 2 along the waterfront? You can do that in Detroit. Come to Cullen Plaza, rent a bike here, get your bike tuned up. And right now they're even doing pickup. You can call her. They will come pick up your bike and fix it and then return it to you. Talk about customer service, right? They got kids' bikes, they got everything. And they do these really great bike tours that ride all throughout the city as well. Again, one of the first businesses actually to partner with the Riverwalk and be on the Riverwalk, and that's Kelly Kavanaugh. So Wheelhouse Detroit, if you haven't been, then it's definitely a bucket list. And if you see Kelly, tell her you heard about her on the tour, and she'll probably blush about it. She's not the type to toot her own horn, which is why I like to do it for her. And I think that's a lot of Detroiters, right? There's so many people doing great stuff, and we're kind of humble about it because we're kind of just doing what we love, or we're doing something that we think will help our neighborhood. And so it's important to share these stories of amazing people. Another great woman-owned business on the Riverwalk is Mary Stallworth and Geisha Girls Detroit. So if you have not been or have not heard about it, this is at the amazing Belade Park, which is just down the road. And especially for folks that have not been out and about much the last couple of years, like a lot of people, but the last couple of years really taught us about the value of public space even more. But the Robert C. Belade Park opened in fall of 2019, so right before the pandemic. But this space, and Addison talked about it a little bit at the beginning. I mean, kudos to the entire team, to not just saying, oh, it's winter and it's cold, let's just like close everything down, and really having amazing winter programming. But part of that is also having in this building here, which is really great to have an indoor building. It's really the only one operated by the Riverfront Conservancy along the riverfront, is that you get to have two great restaurants. And one of those inside here is Geisha Girls Detroit. You also have Smokey G's Smokehouse Barbecue. And yes, these are open. You can get them on DoorDash and stuff too, but you can come down. And actually just last Sunday when we had that like 50-degree day and it was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I took my husband, we live again close to the river. We walked on the Dennis Archer Greenway to Vilade Park, got both Smokey G's. They have a brunch from 12 to 4 there, and the bar's open at that point too. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink for the grownups. And also my husband got his most favorite thing, which is this picture in the middle. So Mary Stallworth is really interesting, has a lot to bring to food, right? Because she learned to make traditional sushi from chefs at restaurants, and also that her mother worked in. Her mother is from Japan, and her father is from Alabama. So she has a fusion of soul food and Japanese food that reflects her Japanese and African-American ancestry. And so and then Detroit, right? Then you have Detroit to it. And so this in the middle is what she calls the Southwest Detroit roll: spicy tuna, avocado, cilantro, fresh jalapeno, crab mix, spicy mayo, Mexican hot sauce, chili lime seasoning. And that is, so she really takes, so if you're like, I'm not really a big sushi person, or if you are, like, it's a great fusion. Or the DJ Philly roll with like cream cheese and avocado. And so again, amazing restaurants, and you can go now in and eat inside, or you can eat outside. You can get it to go. And it is a really great business that just opened in 2020. So midst of the pandemic. So again, small businesses obviously have taken a hit the last couple of years. So it's a win-win. You get great food, or get to go on ride a bike, and you get to support great women-owned businesses, small businesses along the riverfront. So how great is that? And then we're going to go up the DeQuinder Cut here. So here's Vilade Park. And again, the winter is great, but the summer is even awesome. The beach, they have the beach there, which is really awesome. Like, I just want to show you this really quick. They have all these great play areas, and it's just really, really beautiful. But we're going to go up the DeQuinder Cut now. So DeQuinder Cut is a 2-mile greenway that connects the riverfront to Eastern Market. And we're going to go put the little Google guy here on Atwater Street. And this is the amazing Outdoor Venture Center, which is up north downtown. If you haven't been here, put it on your list, especially kids. But this is one of the coolest things I'm about to show you of why virtual tours, why I love them. I thought it was just going to be, we'll do something during the pandemic and then get back to in-person tours. And we are doing in-person tours, absolutely. But this, so here we are on the street level. It's so cool. And the DeQuinder Cut is this amazing space, and the Outdoor Adventure Center, which is up north downtown, all great. And it's just always been there, right? Not always been there. And some of you might remember what it looked like, and some of you probably didn't, because there was no reason to be going down here very much back then. But we can go back in time to see what this was before. This is before Cullen Plaza opens. This is it's now the Outdoor Adventure Center, and what is now the DeQuinder Cut. Isn't that amazing? The before and after, and all along the riverfront, they have great photos on their site of what before looked like. And so here they saved this one wall of this historic building from Detroit Dry Dock and the Globe Trading building. And Henry Ford got his start working for this company. And then they, have the DeQuinder Cut, the riverfront, and today the DeQuinder Cut goes all the way. And there's no motorized, Google Maps can't go on the DeQuinder Cut, so which is good because it's a pedestrian path. They did, I think, do a little bit of a little bit that you can go here. So on the DeQuinder Cut a little bit. They must have got on like a bike or something to do this. So how cool is this? So here we go. We're going to zoom up the DeQuinder Cut. There's Jefferson Avenue. That's really great. And so the DeQuinder Cut before all of this was here was an abandoned railway, space. And so I would see people, because before you could come down and have all this time to work on your art, your graffiti, all of this. And instead of the Riverfront Conservancy saying, oh, get rid of all of that, that's awful, they're like, no, this is part of Detroit's creativity. This is part of Detroit's history. So not only did they leave many of these murals here, but they've also brought more to the Quinder Cut each year as well. And one of those artists and one of those murals is here, which is the mural by Ouizi. So this is Ouizi. Ouizi that's the nickname, and her name is Louise Chen, now Jones. She got married, but she was born and raised in Santa Monica to parents from Shanghai, and is best known for these large-scale floral mural installations, which can be seen all around the United States, from museums to public parks. They often depict site-specific plants and animals. And she was informed, or she was educated in drawing and printmaking originally. So you can kind of see that. And her affinity towards botanical subjects is a big part, stemming from early introduction to Georgia O'Keeffe and of picking figs with her grandmother. So she is actually relatively new to murals, but just in the last few years. But now she has 40 plus murals, and including here on the DeQuinder Cut and at the other end too in Eastern Market. And besides in Detroit, she has murals in Mexico, Shanghai, New York, Aspen, Raleigh, Atlanta, San Diego, Miami. And this piece is called Organic Variables of Growth. And so this is, we can see it here on, so next time, if you haven't been on the Riverwalk, you can now know and start, and we could do an entire art tour. You can see a little bit more over here. There's another artist here, Ellen, we could be talking about, but so let's keep on going down the DeQuinder Cut here. Here's Lafayette Towers, and we're gonna take this all the way to Eastern Market, and talk about one of my favorite artists in Detroit. So let's see if we can go all the way. I think it's going to stop here because I think this is before the extension happened. But you can see again, newer paintings and older paintings. And when we come back, actually, let me skip ahead really quick because I want to talk about Rebel Nell and Amy Peterson, because when you see, this is obviously the work that had been here for a long time. And when you see work, or if you have paint in your home or outside or something, you know that it peels eventually after a long time of being exposed to the elements. And so what do you do with that peeled paint? And you might be like, what do you mean? What do you do with that peeled paint? And throw it away. What's the big deal? Yeah, except this lady was like, you know what we should do with that paint? Make jewelry out of it. What? Yes, like who comes up with this stuff? Amy Peterson comes up with this stuff. So she's a longtime Detroiter. She came here like I think 2007, 2008, and we met way back when. It was just in Detroit. I remember she worked for the Tigers, and this was a side project, but she wanted to create something not just that could be she could make and it'd be a small business, but that really provided jobs and an opportunity for women in the shelter that she lived nearby at COTS in the Cass Corridor area, Midtown Detroit. And so this was many women who had been domestic abuse victims and didn't have a lot to, have a lot of economic freedom. And so that's when she's running down the DeQuinder Cut one day, I guess she said to herself, what if we took that paint and yes, made jewelry of it? I mean, absolutely amazing. But not only that, they hire women, provide wraparound services like financial literacy courses, like childcare, like education resources, home down payment on homes, and I mean the whole perspective. And they have grown and grown and grown. And it all started by being inspired by the art on the DeQuinder Cut. And so if the Riverwalk wasn't here, who knows, and the DeQuinder Cut and the Riverfront Conservancy, who knows if she would have been inspired to do that. So amazing stuff. And then we're going to pop out of the DeQuinder Cut and go back and talk about one of my favorite pieces, but we're going to scooch up there, not going down the street. We're going to go all the way here. Lafayette, and here we go. And Gratiot, so it goes under Gratiot, which is really great. And then right over here, you'll see where this mural by Sydney James is. And actually, this is really cool too. We'll go on the bridge. So actually, this is where Sydney James's mural is. And you're like, what do you mean this is where? I don't see it. We're literally, it's right underneath us. Where's our x-ray vision? It's right here. But you can see this is one of my, why it's one of my favorite pieces here. And Sydney James has done dozens of murals. Like I can't even keep track. It's like another mural, and they're all the most amazing murals. She's a native Detroiter, went to College for Creative Studies, graduated from there, went to LA and was an art director for a long time and worked on TV shows, returned in 2011 and started making her mark. And boy, has she, you have seen her paintings. In 2016, she created 13 murals in just 10 months. That was in 2016. And she has not slowed down. Besides Detroit, she has created public murals in New Orleans, Atlanta, Los Angeles, Hawaii, Long Beach, Accra, and Ghana, and is the 2017 Kresge Fellowship Award. And has, this is one of my favorite pieces here. And she's done a bunch as part of the murals in the Market Festival, and then also the girl with the D earring. Have you seen that one? Not along the riverfront, but is one of my most favorite murals right now in Detroit. So again, go here, see this. We talked about Dobbles last time. This is like his piece, but okay, no, this is the women's tour, but also another of the before and after. So here is and this is at a Quinder Cut freight yard, which has lots of great space for pop-ups and food and beverage and art. And again, you come and you can enter right here, which I'll show you in 1 second. But first, I want to take you back in time to 2007. Yeah. So this was that. And then even working on cleaning all of this up, because the second portion of the DeQuinder cut was from Gratiot to here. So while the first part was done, the Riverfront Conservancy was working hard to get the second part done. You can see that under construction there. And then here we are in 2016. And of course, today with the beautiful DeQuinder cut that we have. And one of the entrances that you can use is right here at the edge of Eastern Market. This is Wilkins Street. And so this is the Keep Growing Detroit garden. And you just go right down this ramp right here. And that's where you'd see this beautiful piece by Sydney James. Okay, we did Amy. And then while you're in Eastern Market, so there's lots of great new things, Rebel Now and Geisha Girls, but there's people always important to talk about that have been here forever. And one of those people is Karen Brown and Savvy Chic. And Savvy Chic, she opened Savvy Chic in Eastern Market in 1998. It was a small store and only 800 square feet, selling a combination of antique, new furniture, accessories. And people told her she was crazy, that there was no way enough foot traffic, it's never going to work. But she knew in her heart that that people were going to come, and she was right. Today they've expanded 3 times, doubled their space, and have gone to going from home and interiors to antiques to also amazing clothes and fashion. And this is right, so we got it right. You get your lunch from Geisha Girl at Valade, and you go over and rent a bike from Kelly at Wheelhouse, and then you ride up the DeQuinder cut and see the Ouizi mural and the Sydney James mural, and then you go to Eastern Market and you check out Savvy Chic. And she's also helped support other small businesses like Cairo Coffee, partnered, they gave Cairo Coffee a space for a while. Then Cairo Coffee closed during COVID, and now they're over and popped up in Spotlight. But they really do have amazing and unique thing. Oh my gosh, like I actually am not a candle person. I have to say that. Like some people are candle people. I'm not. My favorite candle ever, I got it at Savvy Chic. It is absolutely amazing. And now again, expanding to clothes and just cute items, like everyday stuff, right? So this is just to give you context. Here again is the DeQuinder cut. You can either get off at Gratiot and come up here, get off at Wilkins if you want to see the Sydney James mural, take the bike to Savvy Chic. You can also Mogo. You could bike and then park it here at Eastern Market. Oh, I should have talked about Mogo. Mogo is great, and is also Lisa Nuskowski is the founder of that. That really is a great bike rental, and it's really geared towards locals and really helping be that transit, that gap in transit. So you can have like unlimited 30 or 60-minute rides, which is about how long it would take you to go from one stop to the other. And then you park it, and then you get it back on whenever you need to. So So Karen Brown, Savvy Chic. And then one of the big events and big people that has made a huge impact on the riverfront and the city is Gretchen Carhart Valade. And so we're going to go to back down the DeQuinter Cut. And this is we can just scooch over to Hart Plaza. So Hart Plaza, obviously, it's named after Senator Philip Hart and is our main space for great concerts and events and things. And we're excited to get back to that. Movement is coming back this summer, and I hope that the Jazz Fest is too. But the Jazz Fest almost completely went away a few years ago because of lack of funding. And it's the world's largest free jazz event and attracts 300,000 people to downtown Detroit each year. And in 2005, it was slated to maybe not happen. And Mac Avenue Records chairman, one of her many things, and Detroit philanthropist Gretchen Valade emerged as the major sponsor of the festival and expanded the festival in all aspects. So the new footprint is, if you've been to the Jazz Festival since 2005, it wasn't just Hart Plaza. It goes down Woodward Avenue, Campus Martius is included. Covering more than 3 blocks, 2 additional stages. And she's not certainly, she'll be the first to tell you, it's not just her. Like she definitely rallied the troops and is continuing to rally the troops because we cannot lose this amazing festival that happens along the Detroit riverfront. And again, if you've seen whatever the music that you like, jazz festival, electronic music festival on Hart Plaza, taking the river walk, so you can go. So out now following that day, you go get your thing at Savvy Chic, and then you can like bike over to a concert, maybe during Jazz Fest here. And so in 2006, when she also created the Gretchen Valade Endowment for the Arts, and that's where she was took over management of the Jazz Festival. She also opened the Dirty Dog Jazz Cafe in Grosse Pointe. And one of my favorite stories of hers is that someone asked her, "My dear, aren't you afraid of bringing in the wrong element?" And she said, "I think I'm speaking to them right now." I think that is great. So all her life, she's loved jazz, and she has invested so much in the Jazz Festival, and also been a supporter, of course. You might recognize the name with her husband, Robert Valade, is the namesake of Valade Park that we talked about earlier. So we could go on and on and on, and I'm gonna end with this great segue here, and Jennifer Crawford and All Things Detroit Marketplace, because Jennifer, All Things Detroit Day is coming up. She actually got a spirit, the city council to have a resolution that All Things Detroit Day, which is all about supporting small businesses, is the 3rd Sunday in March. And she also has did brunch pop-ups at Valade Park and really curates all these amazing small businesses, both in big events like this at Easter Market, at pop-up events all along the riverfront and other places, but also in now the store in Corktown as well. And so I'm going to hand it back over after I end this with this about Detroit, which is Detroit is big enough to matter in the world and small enough for you to matter in it. And every woman that we talked about today is just an example of that. Whether it's hundreds of years ago or today, we all stand on the shoulders of giants, and it's every person that's come before us that has allowed us to do what we are doing today. And we are that for the people that are coming after us as well. And women in Detroit are not to be messed with or forgotten about. And I'm so glad that we're able to do this tour and focus it along the riverfront, because so many amazing women have made the riverfront what it is today. So on that note, I'm going to hand it back over to Addison, and she's going to talk about a little bit of how to stay in touch with them. For us, just go to the City Institute to check out resources. We have our website here. I have a podcast where I talked with many of these women if you want to hear about that, and for YouTube videos, resources on tours. We also have the public tours, right? So anything that are about to release our April tours, we're going to be doing walking tours of the Riverwalk this summer, which we've always done, but we're adding stops at small businesses this summer. This is really exciting. And then, of course, we always do private tours for any group, or the deeper dive learning journeys. If you want to stop and talk to people around entrepreneurship or around neighborhoods, you name it, we do it all. We just want to make sure people have a really deep understanding and connection to Detroit. So thank you so much. And Addison, you can tell them how to donate, volunteer, and purchase merchandise to support the Riverfront Conservancy.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeanette, and thank you for everyone who has stuck with us this evening. As I'm sure you can see from this last hour, why we work with Jeanette to get such amazing stories told to you all, and another woman in the history of our city who's keeping that history alive. So thank you, Jeanette, for being here. If you liked learning about the Riverfront, if you are a regular visitor of the Riverfront, or you want to experience more of the Riverfront, we've got a bunch of different ways for you to engage. All sorts of programming and events, which I'm going to speak to in a moment. But if you want to see more of these types of things, you can visit our website to make a donation. You can also go on our website and sign up to be a volunteer. We've got some Riverfront volunteers on the call here today, and volunteering is a great way to have a hands-on experience in creating the events and programs and experiences that happen along the Riverfront. And as Jeanette mentioned, we have a whole line of Riverfront swag, like the shirt I'm wearing today, that we sell through Ask Jennifer and the All Things Detroit Marketplace. So please check out allthingsmarketplace.com. The website's also got our link if you want to purchase some of our Riverwalk merch. And like I mentioned, we've got a lot of events coming up. So if you want to enjoy the bars and restaurants that Jeanette shouted out at Valade Park, we are open there every weekend through March, but we have a special Thursday at Valade on St. Patrick's Day from 4:30 to 9. So you can come on down and celebrate the holiday then. If you want to get a jump start on volunteering and see some of the murals that Jeanette spoke to on the DeQuinder Cut, we celebrate Earth Day with a DeQuinder Cut cleanup on Saturday, April 23rd from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. You can come drop in, pick up some trash, take a walk through the DeQuinder Cut and see all the things that you've learned about today, and then head to some of the other parks or businesses that Jeanette just highlighted. And then a few other things I'll point out. We partner with the Sierra Club to host rain barrels on the Riverfront on April 30th. If you're interested in checking out Gabriel Bouchard Park further on the east side and getting yourself a rain barrel, please check that out as well. And lastly, we just opened registration for the Riverfront Run, which is back this year. So if you want to see all the things that Jeanette just highlighted on foot, going for a run on Saturday, June 11th, you can register for that at DetroitRiverfrontRun.com. So I want to thank you all again for being with us this evening, and to Jeanette and the City Institute for telling these stories. Please make sure to check us out on our socials and websites to stay tuned with future events and programs, and have a great rest of your evening.
And if anyone has any last questions, I can stick around for a couple of minutes. And for those that gotta go ahead. But thanks again for having us. And I hope you guys, everyone gets to enjoy more of the Riverfront coming up this spring. Thank you, everybody. I see some great. Leslie, your DXF t-shirt is the softest cotton. I'm so glad. It's a good one. Oh, how are your kids? Yes, they're 3. We're gonna have a little party for them at Valade Park, actually, coming up in a couple of weeks for their 3rd birthday. So I have 3-year-old triplets, or almost 3-year-old triplets, for those that are curious.